So I felt it was necessary to do a before picture because it's going to get messy all up in here. And please don't let my husband see this. I love you, honey. Okay, so here's my box of scraps, and truth be told, I emptied my entire scrap drawer because I wanted to reset, and there's a lot of stuff in here, a lot of stuff that's probably not even worth anything, which is great because it doesn't matter to me what happens. And look at the big scraps. The big scraps, I thought, look at me, I'm going to be using all these great big scraps. Well, they became a little cumbersome, but we'll get to that later. So I start by going through my acrylic paints in my basement and picking ones that are kind of either almost gone or they're dry. And I'm just like sort of watering them down and splattering. Now, had I remembered some of the tips Luisa said, using acrylic paint isn't the wisest to start with because it's like gesso. It's going to dry and everything's going to stick to each other, which is okay because it makes some cool effects, but it can be a real pain in the butt. So as you can see, I'm just changing colors. You probably saw me use about 3 colors here. I'm speeding it up because I really don't think anybody needs to watch me slowly splatter paint. But I did want you to see that I'm using old acrylic paints watered down. And again, I would probably recommend watercolors or something that isn't not going to make the paper stick to each other. And the big pieces were very cumbersome. So I decided, let me lay them down on a pan and let me do them in small batches. And then I'll just bake them in my oven so that they dry. Sounds like a good idea, right? Well, in theory, it's a good idea. But when you have as many scraps as what I had, yeah, you kind of need more space and you probably should be working in small batches. But my husband was away, and I had to take this opportunity to make this mess while he was away. So I was like, I'm going for it. So I basically took out every old baking pan that I had in the house, and I laid out different stacks of paper and just kind of went to town splattering. I went to town splattering so much. I had it in my hair, I had it on my face, I had it on my glasses. And to the right, you may see this a little bit of white. That's a brand new like recording studio base I just bought, and I'm splattering it with paint, which is not good. So I had to stop the video at one point and clean that off. But as you can see, I've learned a little lesson here. I'm going to take my big pieces and splatter them first. I'm using them to protect my pan. And I'm just really, like I said, I'm just layering paint, I'm just splattering, and I haven't quite figured out that gesso sticks. Oh, did you see me wiping off my base over there? I just realized, oh my gosh, I need to protect this. So now I've washed it down and I'm going to be a little bit more careful, a little less zealous with the brush. And I am just going to continue to splatter and pile and splatter and pile. Rinse, wash, repeat. But wait, look to the right. Do you see that little strip of tickets just poking out? That's the reason I'm making this video, because every time you try something and you play, happy accidents happen, and some little gem comes out of every play session. That little strip of tickets is why this little play session went from 2 hours to 6, 7 hours all night long. And I can't wait to show you what happens with that strip of tickets and what I do after the strip of tickets. Okay, I'm on my third pan, and I would say that at this point, I've probably been doing this for about 45 minutes or an hour. I'm having fun, but I have no clue what's ahead of me. My recommendation is do this in small batches. Don't do as many scraps as what I've done. It was insane. But I guess if you only have one session, you can really do like a year's worth of scraps in one sitting. So I guess if you wrap your head around it and say, I'm going for it and I'm going to do this all day, it really is fun. But you also learn things. So if you work in small batches, then you know, you can kind of perfect the process. I definitely would do some things different the second time I do this, but I have a huge box of scraps now. But I will do some in some smaller batches in the future. So now all the paper's out of the oven. I had 4 pans over my double oven, so I have 2 ovens. And now I'm doing the stamping. I will link Luise's video because you should really watch her and not me do this because she explains it better. And I'm really just showing you my process. You can learn how to do the steps. It was her idea. So please watch her. Anyway, I'm quickly realizing that between trying to take the papers apart and stamping them, working small is not going to work. So I cover my countertop with like old newspapers and decide I'm going to like just go to town full tilt. And this is what I'm dealing with, people. It's like Christmas when you decide to make a couple batches of cookies and before you know it, you've made 8 and you're crying 4 hours later because you have to finish cooking them. And basically what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stamp. I'm going to spray coffee all over them. I'm going to use my heat gun and dry them the best I can. And I'm just going to continue working on the papers. So it's the next day, and here's my huge box full of scraps. I mean, huge box full. Look at all of these scraps, an entire box full of jazzed up scraps using Luise's technique, and I just want to show you how some of them came out. So first of all, I would definitely learn things from this process. Luise has a palette, a color palette that's very her, and I actually just kind of used what I had. I didn't really think about what color palette I wanted to use. But like any art project, if you know ahead of time the colors you're looking to make, it would be great to put your inks together and have a palette. And if you work in small batches, you could have different color palettes of scraps. So I would definitely do that. This was just the first time through. So I love this piece. This is honestly just look at a packaging, the Happy Planner packaging. And I love this for a pocket. I'm going to probably cut this off and put it here. And won't that make an amazing, I love all that yummy detail and layering. Oh, it's going to be a great pocket in a journal. And then there's just, like she said, there's just, you look at these pieces and on each piece you can find like these yummy little places that just are super exciting. This is a coffee filter that I did. I'm going to try to see if I can find some of the pieces that I really, really love how they came out. Like just, I'm just going to love collaging with these. Even some of the magazine pieces I had in there and some tissue paper. I mean, I did play around with some metallics. Look at that. I love that. That is going to be beautiful. And more tissue. Oh, I want to show you a couple fun things that came out. I had some tags. Look how nice the tags came out. I didn't do the back, but that's okay. I had a artist postcard from a gallery I went to. And it must have been treated with something because all the water or the coffee dyeing and then the baking, it cracked. And I love the patina on this. It came out so cool. So that was another happy accident. It was really cool how some of the ledger paper came out. More packaging, more just great results. I mean, this is just a little handful of things, envelopes. This is just a handful of what I ended up making, I mean, all the different types of papers. And I'm just going to have so much fun going through this and looking for those little tiny places that came out good. This was that big receipt paper that I had originally down to protect my pan. I had maps. I have, oh, where's that piece? I have to show you this really exciting piece I have. I had this old part of a book. Look how cool where the stitching was. It must have been the end of a signature that I had. I absolutely love this piece and can't wait to use it. And then here are a few of my other favorites. This was just an old calendar, like last year's calendar. And I just love the numbers, and it was so fun. And I can imagine doing like swaps, like if you had friends and you all did some of this and you swapped some of your papers, you'd all have different paper, different color palettes. And it's like going back to that whole Christmas cookie thing, right? We don't like to spend 2 whole days baking 12 dozen cookies, like 12 different kinds of cookies. So that's why cookie swaps started, right? So that I make 12 dozen of one cookie, and then we get together and we each swap a dozen, and then we walk away with 12 different types. You could do that with friends with this technique. And then I have all these little bags that I'm going to put together of different sizes. And Louisa, this was really brilliant, really, really brilliant. And I can't thank you enough for introducing all of us to this technique. But now I really, really, really want to show you the hidden gem that came out of this whole process. This is the thing that was my happy accident and the real gem of this entire play session, these tickets. Looking at this opened my mind to what could be done with this technique in simple, basic ephemera. And it got me so excited, I had to stay up all night and see if I could transform a basic roll of raffle tickets into something special. So this was really why I'm posting this video. This ticket idea is blowing my mind, and I'm just super excited about it. I have one of these old rolls of, raffle tickets, the kind you get at the hobby store, when you have like a function at, your kid's school. I think that's why I had them, literally. And I soaked them in coffee and coffee dyed them, because I was so inspired by how that little sheet of tickets came out in my scrap pile. Now, I'm really happy with many of the scraps that came out of this afternoon's little play session, but the tickets were like awesome, because yes, it's 9 o'clock at night and this is what I'm doing. The tickets were awesome because I never know what to do with that whole roll. I mean, they're just white, boring, they're not vintage, and this gives me something really exciting to do with them. So as you could see, it was 9 o'clock at night, so it was time for me to sit down and watch a couple TV shows while they baked in the oven. And here they are, dry and ready for me to use Louise's technique on and see if I can transform these tickets into something a little special. So I take out my better stamps, my Tim Holtz, I think it's Ticket Booth, and the other one, I can't remember, it's the specimen stamps. I'll try to link them in the box below so you know exactly what stamps I used. And I'm just going to put ink on certain parts of the stamp because it's too big for the ticket. And I'm going to try to line up the stamps with the open part of the raffle ticket and sort of mimic like that they're real, that they're real tickets and they have cool writing on them or cool numbers. And I'm going to use my 3 colors I was using earlier, which I should have mentioned are waterproof. Make sure you use waterproof ink pads because you're going to be spraying them with coffee and distress ink. And if they're not waterproof when you stamp, they're going to just blend and bleed, and you will not get any definition to what you're stamping on your paper. It's very critical that you know what's water reactive and what isn't water reactive. And if you are layering things that have water in them, you need to make sure you're using, excuse me, waterproof inks if you want to preserve like the image that you're putting down. So you can see on the right, this big stack of tickets I have, and I'm just using different colors and different numbers and playing around. Some things I liked, some things I didn't like. I really just wanted to play with this idea of transforming these really boring, white, everyday raffle tickets into something that would be great journal fodder, collage fodder, little tiny things that I can use in clusters and embellishments. And I had fun the whole day, but this was the most fun for me. And it was interesting to kind of play around with all the little stamps and kind of envision how they would look with splatters and the layers that I was going to add. I definitely found my favorites. That 785 was super effective to me. And then using this like postmark and only covering half, or maybe it was the specimen, the round specimen stamp, but only using half of the stamp, I found to be really, really effective. And probably one of my favorite things that I put on. Then I also was playing around with the specimen flowers, which, though they were okay. And I had to go with the moth stamp as well, which I think had some merit. So we'll see how they turn out. Again, that's the fun of playing, right? Okay, so now it's only like 11 o'clock at night, and the lighting is horrible, sorry, but, it is 11 o'clock at night. And now I am going to water down some more of the white acrylic paint, and I'm going to use the Tim Holtz splatter brush, which, by the way, a really great little tool to have. It makes splattering so much easier, and you can control it to a certain degree. This was a really good purchase, and I would highly recommend getting it. And clearly I'm a little punch drunk because I'm tired, because I forget to dry that acrylic paint before I do some more stamping. But it all ends up okay. But I will say this is another unbelievable purchase I made that I use all the time. This rubber stamp is a splatter rubber stamp. If you can find a splatter rubber stamp, it makes your life so much easier. I'm putting some black splatters now on. You can really control where you want those, like that little splatter effect. It's not exactly the same as splattering it, but it does a really good job. So now I'm getting some distress ink that I watered down. Oh, no, this isn't distress ink. This is actual India ink, green India ink I have that I watered down, and I just kind of like, as you saw, kind of dribbled it or splattered it all over the tickets because I wanted to age them and give them some more patina. And then once this is dry, I'm going to go in and do that little trick that I don't know who first started this, whether it was Barbara, Louisa, or someone else. I apologize because I don't know where this started, but adding distress ink to your acrylic block and then watering it down. And I'm just adding this blue distress ink. I think it's something like Faded Jeans or something. I don't quite remember. And I'm just like adding that color as well. And just trying to give some interest. This is I forget what this is now. It's yellow. So it might be the tea dye. So anyway, I'm just adding all these colors and layers. And I will say, I had so much acrylic paint out, and I had used some silver acrylic paint earlier in my process, and it was on the bottom it wasn't completely clean in my jar. So all the white gesso that I added on top has a little bit of sparkle to it, which I like, but I wish I had noticed it because I didn't want all of them to be sparkly. I'm not a super sparkly girl, but here they are. And now I'm going to show you what I came up with. Okay, guys. I have to show you how the tickets came out. They are awesome. They have fabulous color and details, and they look vintage, and they're going to look awesome in all the ways I hoped for embellishments and collage, and I am just tickled by them. In the end, I ended up, the last step that I'm not sure I have on video is I took the ink pads and went on the edge of the ink pads to sort of give it that sort of burnt edge look to some of them. And I'm just thrilled with how they came out. I have a whole bag now of tickets. Glorious, beautiful tickets. Now, I think I mentioned there was like a little bit of like glimmer, iridescent paint at the bottom of my pot when I added the white gesso. So they have a little bit of shimmer, which I don't mind, but I definitely don't want them on all the tickets. So I already have, before I went to bed last night at 1 o'clock in the morning, I heated up my oven to like 300 degrees, and then I shut it off and I put in a batch of tea dye tickets, and I have this whole set that I can now do different colors. I'm not going to do them today because I have so much to process, but I definitely now have these ready to go, and I could pick just a few and use the color palette that I'm thinking about doing. I think that Luise's technique is just amazing, but I think what's also really wonderful about it is it can be used for more than just scraps. That same process can be used on small pieces of ephemera that are common, like these plain tickets. To go from this to this is really something special, in my opinion. And this was my little happy accident. I mean, as much as I love those scraps, that was my happy accident. And this tissue paper that I had down last night is the most yummy tissue paper ever now. And I can't wait to use this in a project as well. Again, thank you, Luise, for this inspiring, very inspiring project for a use for all my scraps. And honey, the kitchen is clean again. I promise. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it added to the conversation of jazzing up your scraps. Luise, if you happen to watch this, I hope I did your technique justice. It was so much fun. It was so exciting. And my husband will never want to travel again. See you later, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Bye. And here's proof. My kitchen survived. I may or may not have had to scrub the floor because there were a few splatters, but everything is as it should be. And I can welcome my husband home, and he'll never know the difference.